talk to us about, as you're watching these Supreme Court nomination hearings, what comes to mind when you think about how Brett Kavanaugh might rule on some of the upcoming tech cases?
Yeah, certainly. And, you know, I'll preface it to say that some of the hearings that are going on with the Facebook executives, with Google submitting statements, a lot of these hearings preview kind of the next generation of legislation and legal issues. And so I think it's important to take that context in mind when thinking about how Kavanaugh or any Supreme Court nominee would fit into the existing court. Issues of privacy, of cybersecurity, intellectual property, tax, antitrust. There are a whole bunch of different things that fit together when thinking about the tech implications for the Supreme Court. But I would say at the forefront of everybody's mind at this point are the privacy concerns, how that translates over to the digital world. Kavanaugh was involved in some of the net neutrality rulings. And so I think that's, from a tech perspective, at the forefront of everyone's mind when kind of getting into some of his legal decisions and how he's thinking about cases.
Free speech is very much at issue as well, especially when it comes to tech. What stays up, what comes down on these social media platforms? How has he ruled on free speech, especially when it comes to digital platforms?
Yeah, the overarching way to think about the way that Kavanaugh has ruled in the past, I think, is pro-free speech from a corporate perspective. So when you look at the net neutrality rulings and if you view those as some kind of restriction on how the internet service providers are able to restrict flow of certain data or information, Kavanaugh was highly critical of that. And in similar cases, he's kind of landed on, we'll say, the pro-business side of some of these free speech issues, which goes with kind of, I guess, a general trend of wanting to allow more free speech, but it's also, you know, a little bit of a concern when you think about how to best regulate some of these companies moving forward. If there aren't sufficient protocol in place, there are also some national security concerns and general security concerns that are implicated, and so it kind of strikes a balance between the free speech and then Kavanaugh's also a staunch supporter of national security interests. So I guess it's a balance between those two issues.
So, David, all that considered, is it a good thing or a bad thing for these tech companies that you have a judge who is pro-business, pro-free speech, but also as the president, at the very least, is certainly ratcheting up the amount of attention he is paying to these tech companies that have made a lot of money, you know, under the prior administration?
Well, certainly we are increasingly living in a technologized society, so the Supreme Court is going to be facing tech-related issues more and more as time goes on. But I would say, on balance, what he believes would probably be good for the companies. I mean, America is all about free speech. It's part of our Constitution. He believes in the Constitution clearly. And these companies would dearly love to have some authority tell them from above what is and is not allowed when it comes to what is said in the public sphere that's digital. The thing about Kavanaugh that interests me is that he is such a legal scholar, and he seems to be, for all of his extreme conservatism, deeply well respected for his scholarship. And I've seen it said that he's probably going to be the most scholarly Supreme Court justice, if he gets on there, that we've had in a long time. So it may be that his just sheer thoughtfulness will be beneficial, because there's a lot of issues coming up that are not right or left issues that are just going to require some good, hard, solid thinking.
Well, and both liberals and conservatives, Matt, have criticized these platforms for being biased. Of late, you have President Trump saying that Google has a strong liberal bias, and you know, when you search for Trump news, you know, you're seeing all anti-Trump articles. How might Kavanaugh's appointment and Kavanaugh weigh on an issue like that?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting in the context of all the Senate Judiciary Committee kind of weighing in and doing some grandstanding today. Both sides will paint him as either, you know, too extreme for the Supreme Court. When you look through his record, he's certainly reached across the nomination aisle. You know, judges don't have an official affiliation, but he's been able to work together with judges who show both conservative and liberal biases. You know, he's been on the same side as Merrick Garland in a number of criminal cases and other issues. He seems to take things from a textual perspective, or textualist, so looking at kind of the letter of the law and trying to apply that strictly. And so ideally that's somewhat agnostic as to a conservative or liberal view. I would tend to think that it sides probably more on the what you classify as the conservative side. But what we've seen from a lot of his jurisprudence is he tends to look at the rules. He likes if there's a bright line, or as in the past suggested, if there are bright line rules as to what, content or behaviors cross the line, what's permissible, especially in like an employment law context. We've seen some of that type of thinking. So, I guess it's yet to be seen how it'll play out. And some judges, when they get in the peer group of the Supreme Court, maybe start to view things a little bit differently. But I would say largely probably conservative leaning, but also kind of by the letter of the law or the agency regulations that are set forth tend to be how Kavanaugh's ruled in the past.